everyone, it's Tinkerbell. I hope everyone's having a flitterific day on the mainland. I'd like to share with you one of my favorite stories of my adventures in Neverland. This is a story called Tinkerbell. Oh, where's the Tinkerbell story? Well, you should have Peter Pan read it because I'm not reading. Oh, so I'm in the story too? Oh, there I am. I knew I was an important part. So this is a story of Tinkerbell. Oh, and Peter Pan. And Wendy, Michael, and John. This story begins on a quiet street in London at the home of the Darling family. Before bed every evening, Wendy would tell her younger brothers fantastic stories of Peter Pan's many marvelous adventures in Neverland with Tinkerbell. They believed he was real and made him the hero of all their nursery games while fighting off pirates. But that night was to be Wendy's last night in the nursery. Wendy's father had decided that the next day she should move into a room of her own. It was time for Wendy to grow up. Peter Pan waited until the children were fast asleep. Then he crept through the window. A sparkling light followed him. It was Tinkerbell! Tinkerbell was a pixie and one of Peter Pan's best friends, the best friend, and the most beautiful pixie of all of Neverland. I added that part myself. It should be in here. I'll write it in later. The children woke and were delighted to see Peter Pan. Peter Pan, I knew you'd come back. I saved your shadow for you, Wendy exclaimed as she ran to get her sewing basket. I'm so glad you came back tonight, Wendy said, because it's my last night in the nursery. No, I won't have it, Peter said. Come on. But where are we going? Asked Wendy. To Neverland. You'll never grow up there, Peter said. But Peter, how do we get to Neverland? Asked Wendy. Fly, of course, he said, stretching out his arms. Wendy gasped. Fly? It's easy, Peter grinned. You think of a wonderful thought, like Tinkerbell, of course. Wendy, John, and Michael all thought very happy thoughts, but still, they could not fly. They probably weren't thinking of me. They should have. Peter realized they were missing something important. Pixie dust, of course. He borrowed some from Tinkerbell and sprinkled a bit of it on each of their heads. And before they knew it, Wendy, John, and Michael were floating in the air. We can fly, they shouted. We can fly. Peter leaped up to the windowsill. Here we go, off to Neverland. Soon they landed on a big puffy cloud high above Neverland, and Wendy, John, and Michael began to point out places they recognized from Wendy's tales. Suddenly, Peter shouted, Look out! A heavy cannonball shot past them, narrowly missing their heads. They were under attack. It was Peter's sworn enemy, Captain Hook. Quick, Tink, Peter shouted. Take Wendy and the boys to the island. I'll stay here and draw Hook's fire. Tink was jealous of Wendy and the boys, just a little bit. They were getting all of Peter Pan's attention. Well, they were. So she flew to the island very fast, not on purpose. What? I should read the story how it is? But I am. Oh, well, I added a little bit here and there. I figured they wanted to hear from my perspective. They should make a story of Tinkerbell's perspective, because it's different. Tinkerbell rushed into Hangman's Tree, the secret hideout where Peter's loyal friends, the Lost Boys, lived with Peter. The Lost Boys were wild and dressed like animals, but they would do anything Peter asked. Tink lied, a little bit, telling them that Wendy was attacking the island, and the Lost Boys scrambled to defend Peter's hideout. Aiming with their slingshots, they pummeled poor Wendy. Just as Wendy was about to crash, Peter Pan swooped in and caught her. Peter was very angry at Tinkerbell for playing that trick on Wendy. So he banished her, but only for a week, because Tinkerbell was the most important person in the whole world to him. I didn't add that part. That's written in the book. Tinkerbell flew away in a huff, and I had every right to do so. Wendy, John, and Michael were eager to see the island. So Peter, I'm not on this page. I'm going to skip to this page. Captain Hook did not give up quite so easily. He knew that Tinker Bell was still very angry with Peter for banishing her, and she had every right to be angry. So Hook kidnapped Tinker Bell and tricked her into revealing Peter's hideout. Once Tink marked the spot on the map, Hook locked her up in a lantern on his ship. That night, Captain Hook, Mr. Smee, and the pirates quietly surrounded Hangman's Tree. Then, when Wendy and the boys stepped outside, Hook's men grabbed them, tied them up, and took them to the ship. But Hook wasn't done just yet. He had a plan to get Peter, who was still inside Hangman's Tree. Hook carefully lowered a package into Peter's hideout on a long rope. The package was wrapped up like a present, but inside was a ticking bomb. Back on Hook's ship, the pirates celebrated their victory over Peter Pan. Captain Hook gleefully took Wendy and the boys that if they didn't join his crew, they would have to walk the plank. Wendy refused. "Peter Pan will save us," she said. "Or Tinker Bell." Captain Hook laughed and twirled his mustache as he told Wendy about the bomb in Peter's tree. "Peter Pan will be blasted out of Neverland forever," Hook said. "No," gasped Wendy. When Tinker Bell heard Hook's evil plan, she broke out of the lantern and raced to Hangman's Tree to warn Peter. "I'm pretty strong. Not as strong as I am beautiful." But moments later, from the deck of the ship, Wendy and the boys saw a huge explosion on the island. Peter's hideout was gone. Had Tink been able to save him? Probably. I'm pretty good like that. It was time for Wendy to walk the plank. She bravely stepped over the edge and fell. But then, the most curious thing happened. There was no splash. Hook and Smee were baffled. They peered over the side of the ship, but there was no Wendy and no ripple in the water. Was it a trick? Was it a curse? Was it me? Was it?
It was mainly Tinker Bell.
No, it was Peter Pan. Tinker Bell and Peter had saved Wendy together. Peter Pan flew Wendy to safety at the top of the ship. Then he confronted Hook. "This time you've gone too far," Peter said, pulling out his dagger. Hook drew his sword and he and Peter began to duel. Hook thrust, swiped, and stabbed with his sword, but Peter Pan flew away just out of Hook's reach. "Fly, fly, fly, you coward," Hook snarled. "You wouldn't dare fight an old Hook man to man." "Nobody calls Pan a coward and lives. I'll fight you man to man," said Peter, "with one hand behind my back." They clashed on the tall masts of the ship. Peter kept his word and did not fly away. Hook disarmed him, and just when it seemed like Peter Pan was doomed, he yanked the ship's flag over Hook's head and took away his sword. "You're mine, Hook," Peter said. Captain Hook and the pirates fled from the ship, never to be seen again. "Hooray, hooray for Captain Pan," Wendy and the boys cheered, and Tinker Bell cheered the loudest. Tinker Bell sprinkled pixie dust all over the pirate ship. It began to float higher and higher into the sky. Finally, when the ship was among the clouds, Peter set a course for London. When Wendy woke up by the windowsill, she noticed they were back home in the nursery with her parents. They paused to look into the night sky to see a ship made out of clouds. "I have the strangest feeling I've seen that ship before. A long time ago when I was very young," her father said. He realized Wendy didn't need to grow up just yet, and Tinker Bell and everyone else lived happily ever after. I hope everyone enjoyed my story today. I had so much fun reading to all of you. And don't forget, all you need is a little faith, trust, and pixie dust.